Hey buddy, if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's begin the story. I didn't think working the graveyard shift at Dunkin' would change my life. Back then, it was just a job. Boring, repetitive, nothing more. My name's Adrian Cole. I was 23, and I'd been stuck in Mill Haven, Ohio, a half-dead town where most businesses closed before midnight, and the only real light came from gas stations and the 24-hour donut shop on Route 11. I'd moved here 2 years earlier after my mom lost her battle with cancer. My dad had never been in the picture, and suddenly I was alone, broken, drifting. College wasn't working out. I dropped out after a year, so I packed up what little I had and came to Millhaven, where my aunt offered me her basement until I could stand on my own. Duncan was the first place that called me back. It wasn't glamorous, but the paycheck was steady, and there was something comforting about the rhythm of it. Mixing dough, refilling glaze, scrubbing counters. The graveyard shift wasn't for everyone. My manager, Carla, liked to call it the quiet hours, but anyone who worked it long enough knew the quiet was never truly peaceful. It was heavy, almost oppressive, like the silence itself was watching you. The crew was small at night, usually just me, Carla, and Deshaun, a 20-year-old college kid who hated the job but needed cash. Sometimes he'd fall asleep on the stool in the back, headphones in, muttering to himself. Carla mostly buried herself in paperwork, sighing through cigarettes out back when things were slow. That left me alone on the floor most nights, tending to the occasional drunk, wandering in for coffee, or a cop grabbing a box of munchkins to get through patrol. I should probably tell you, I wasn't a social media guy. I hated how fake it all felt. But like most people, I still scrolled. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, endless feeds that felt like poison and sugar at the same time. And one night, I made a mistake. It was after 2 a.m. The store was dead, the hum of the fridge and the fryer timer, the only sounds. I was scrolling Twitter on my phone behind the counter, half asleep, when I saw a thread trending. Unpopular music opinions. Most of the posts were predictable. X artist is overrated. Y band fell off after 2018. I don't know what came over me, maybe boredom, maybe irritation, but I typed out a snarky line. K-pop isn't music, it's marketing with a beat, fast food for teenagers. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't even think. I just hit send, slipped my phone into my apron, and went back to glazing donuts. When I checked my phone again during break, my chest caved. Hundreds of notifications, replies, quote tweets, DMS. Some told me I was jealous. Others sent vile insults. One wrote, "Hope you choke on your donuts, racist trash." Another was worse, "Found you." The account was locked. Profile picture blurred, but the words cut. I panicked, deleted the tweet, then my whole account. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself it was over. Online mobs move fast, right? They'd get bored and move on. But something stayed with me. The way my stomach clenched every time the door chime rang at Dunkin'. Around that time, I got into Omegle. It felt safer, anonymous. Just faces, voices, fleeting conversations. I'd sit on my break stool in the back, laptop balanced on my knees, cold brew in hand. I met strangers from Brazil, Denmark, Michigan, talked movies, music, books. Some connections lasted 10 minutes, some 30 seconds. No consequences. Until one night, a face appeared, a girl, maybe 21. Long black hair, pastel room behind her, fairy lights glowing faintly. And behind her, BTS posters. She smiled softly and I smiled back. We talked food, movies, normal. She asked what I did for work. I told her, half joking, "I'm the donut guy, graveyard shift." She giggled. Then tilting her head, she said, "Are you Ace 47? My old Twitter handle." My throat went dry. Uh, no, don't know what that is." Her smile vanished. Her voice dropped. "I know what you said about them." I slammed my laptop shut so fast the lid cracked. 3 nights later, I was alone. Carla left early. Deshaun called out. At 2:47 a.m., while I was prepping glaze, the front window shattered. A brick clattered across the floor, rolling to a stop at my feet. In black Sharpie, across the surface, BTS forever. I called the cops. They showed up half an hour later, bored, dismissive. Kids messing around, one said. You got enemies? I didn't answer. The next night, a group appeared outside the shop windows. Not ordering, not talking, dancing. Perfectly synchronized, a BTS routine. Their faces half hidden by hoodies. In the center, the girl from Omegle. Her smile was wide, unblinking. Her eyes locked on me the entire time. When the song ended, they all drew a hand across their throats, then walked away. I quit Omegle, deleted every account I had, but it didn't matter. Posters began appearing around town. My face next to the tweet. Red X's slashed through my eyes. Flash mobs. One outside my apartment, one in the Dunkin parking lot. Always her in the middle, always smiling. I started carrying pepper spray. I bought a BTS enamel pin and wore it like armor, hoping it would trick them. But the fear never left. It was early October, 3 months after the tweet. I woke to scratching at my door. Whispers, laughter, the rattle of a lockpick. I shoved my dresser against the door, heart racing. Silence, then a thud behind me. The window, open, figures climbing in, one by one. Black hoodies, 4 of them, silent. She was last. Pink hair now, eyes shining. Lighter flicked on in her hand. She stepped forward, whispered, "Say it." I was shaking, tears in my eyes. I was wrong. I love BTS. I love their music. Her smile widened. The others grinned. One by one, they slipped back out the window, vanishing into the night. That was 3 months ago. No one's come back. No bricks. No dances. But I still wear the pin. I still double-check locks. And every time I see a pastel glow in a stranger's window, my chest tightens. I don't talk about it anymore. I learned the hard way. Some people don't forgive. Some people don't forget. And sometimes a stupid tweet doesn't just ruin your life. It takes it over. Story 2. I was 15 when it happened. Back then, I was just another quiet sophomore at Ashfield High School in upstate New York. My name's Ethan Carver, and if you'd asked anyone who I was at the time, they'd probably shrug. I wasn't popular. I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't failing classes, but I wasn't exactly excelling either. I existed somewhere in that gray zone where teachers barely remembered your name and classmates didn't care if you were around. Most of my life back then revolved around video games, schoolwork, and my small circle of friends, Marcus, Devin, and Caleb. The 4 of us had known each other since elementary school. We all lived in the same neighborhood on the east side of Ashfield, a suburban town that looked picture perfect from the outside. Neat lawns, white fences, the smell of grills in summer. But if you lived there, you knew how suffocating it could feel. Everything closed by 9 p.m. Cops drove slow through the streets like babysitters, and the biggest weekend event was usually the high school football game. That Friday night, October 27th, 2017, the weekend before Halloween, was one of those games. I never cared about football, and neither did my friends. But when the whole town showed up, it became less about the game and more about just being there. People hung out, couples made out under the bleachers. Kids ran around, hopped up on sugar. If you weren't at the game, people asked questions on Monday. So we went. The 4 of us walked together, a 30-minute trek through half-lit streets where you could see your breath in the cold. I remember the sound of leaves scraping across the pavement, that constant crunch under our sneakers. Caleb had a speaker in his hoodie pocket, playing lo-fi beats, and Marcus was cracking dumb jokes, trying to get Devin to laugh. When we got to the game, the stands were packed. The smell of popcorn and nachos hit us first. Bright lights poured down onto the field, and the cold seemed less sharp with all the noise and energy around. We stayed maybe 10 minutes leaning against the chain-link fence, pretending to care. That was when Marcus said, "Yo, let's bounce." Dunkin's open. See, there was this Dunkin Donuts about a mile out near the edge of town, the only place open 24/7 in Ashfield. For high school kids, it was basically sacred ground. You'd find people sitting there at 2 in the morning, sipping iced coffee and whispering about stuff their parents wouldn't approve of. Devin raised an eyebrow. "Dude, that's the opposite way home." "So? You got somewhere to be?" Marcus shot back. "I didn't. None of us did. And honestly, the idea of sitting in a warm booth with donuts sounded way better than freezing at a football game we didn't care about. So we went. The walk felt longer than it probably was, but we didn't mind. We passed the dark outlines of houses, then the old industrial lot that had been closed for years, until the streets got emptier and quieter. The Dunkin sat next to a stretch of farmland, Harper's Farm, known for its massive corn maze every October. Families drove in from 2 towns over for that maze. By day it was all hay rides, pumpkin patches, kids with painted faces, but at night it closed tight. At least it was supposed to. When we got there, something felt wrong right away. The Dunkin parking lot was empty. Not a single car, but inside the lights blazed like it was open for business. We hesitated at the door. "You sure they're open?" Devin muttered. Caleb tugged the handle. The door swung open easy, bell jingling overhead. "Open enough." The place smelled like fresh coffee and sugar, machines humming quietly in the background. The display case was fully stocked, glazed, Boston cream, munchkins piled high. Everything was normal, except nobody was there. No cashier, no voices, no sound except the faint hum of the fridges. "Hello," Marcus called. No answer. He smirked. "Dude, tell me this doesn't feel like a horror movie." "Shut up," Devin muttered, but I could hear that edge in his voice. That same unease was starting to curl in my stomach. Caleb leaned over the counter and shouted, "Yo! Anyone back there?" Silence. That's when I noticed it. The door that swung into the kitchen had a streak on it, a red smear just at hand level. Small but noticeable. I froze. "Guys, look." They turned. Marcus squinted. Probably jelly. But even he didn't sound convinced. Devin shook his head. "Nope, I'm not doing this. Let's bounce." But Caleb, being Caleb, grinned. "What if they're at the maze? You know, like messing around before they close it up?" "Dude, the maze closes at 9, I said. "It's almost midnight." "Yeah, but what if?" He was already heading for the door. "Come on, just 5 minutes." I should have said no. Every part of me screamed to say no, but Marcus and Devin followed, and I didn't want to be the coward. So I went. We crossed the empty road, climbed the wooden fence, and stepped onto Harper's Farm property. The sign still glowed faintly under a solar light. Harper's Corn Maze, last entry 8:30 p.m. The gate was open. We walked in. The corn towered above us, 10 feet at least. The dirt path was narrow, cutting sharp turns every few yards. The air inside was colder, heavier somehow, like the stalks themselves were trapping it. Our footsteps crunched loud on the dirt. We decided, stupidly, to split. Marcus and Caleb went left. Devin and I went right. At first it was fine. Just dirt paths, the occasional hay bale. The silence felt heavy, like the whole maze was holding its breath. Then we heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps. Not ours. Devin stopped dead. "You hear that?" I nodded, pulse spiking. The sound came from inside the corn, maybe 5 feet off the path. Slow, deliberate. "Marcus?" Devin called out. Nothing. The stalks rustled, moved, like someone pushing carefully through them. "Let's go," I whispered. We sped up, not running, but fast enough that my heartbeat felt louder than my steps. That's when a voice drifted out, low, raspy, male. "You're not supposed to be here." We froze. I couldn't place where it came from. It felt like it came from everywhere. Then, footsteps, heavy, on the path behind us. I turned. A man stood 30 feet back. Tall, torn flannel shirt, jeans caked with mud. His face half-shadowed, but his eyes, God, his eyes were wide, unblinking and locked on us. And he was smiling. "Run!" I gasped. We tore down the path, taking random turns, corn scraping our arms as we crashed through. But every time we slowed, we heard it. Crunch, crunch. Still walking, not running, like he knew the maze better than us. We stopped once, gasping for air, when Devin whispered, "What if there's more than one?" The thought almost paralyzed me. Then, a scream. Marcus. It wasn't playful. It wasn't fake. It was raw, terrified. We sprinted toward it, breaking through the corn until we stumbled onto another path. Caleb was there, pale-faced, shaking. He, he grabbed Marcus, Caleb stammered. He grabbed him. We didn't wait. We didn't argue. We just ran. I don't remember how, but eventually we saw the faint glow of the road through the stalks. We burst out, vaulted the fence, and didn't stop running until we were blocks away, crouched behind a stranger's car, sucking air like drowning men. Marcus never came out. The cops searched the maze that night, and the next. They found nothing. No man, no Marcus. Just one thing, a clearing deep in the maze. Corn flattened in a perfect circle. In the center, Marcus's phone. Screen shattered. Harper's farm shut down. No more maze. No more festival. Marcus's family moved away the following spring. The police ruled it a runaway case. But I know better. We all do. Something or someone was in that maze. Watching, waiting. And to this day, every time I pass a Dunkin Donuts at night, I feel that same cold dread crawl up my spine. Because I know what waits on the other side of an empty counter, and I know what waits in the corn. Story 3, I was never a morning person. I don't think anyone who really knows me would ever use the words bright and early in the same sentence as my name. I'm more of the type who snoozes alarms until they stop out of pity, stumbles into the shower half asleep, and barely makes it through the day on caffeine and stubbornness. That's important to know before anything else. Because the morning this happened to me, I was already operating at the edge of exhaustion, the kind where your nerves are raw and your brain is foggy. My name is Elena Harper. I'm 26 years old. I live in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania, a city that's technically a city, but if you ask anyone who's grown up here, they'll tell you it's really just a sprawl of old neighborhoods stitched together with highways, strip malls, in a downtown that never quite got finished. My apartment is a one-bedroom in a converted house on Brookhaven's east side, close enough to walk to work, but far enough that the walk feels longer when you're dreading it. And yeah, my job. I open at Dunkin Donuts. I never thought I'd still be here, in the same town I grew up in. Back in high school, I used to dream about leaving. College in Boston, maybe New York. But life had a way of breaking those neat little escape plans. My mom got sick when I was 19, and after she passed, my dad wasn't in the picture anymore. Suddenly, I was working 2 jobs just to stay afloat and take care of myself. College never happened. Dunkin wasn't supposed to be forever. It was supposed to be temporary. A paycheck, free coffee, maybe a stepping stone to something else. But here I am 4 years later, manager on paper, burned out in reality. The store opens at 5:30 a.m. on weekdays, which means I usually leave my apartment around 4:45. It's about a 25-minute walk if I take the long way. Sidewalks, street lamps, cars already rushing toward the interstate. Or it's a 15-minute walk if I cut through the strip of woods that separates the residential blocks from the commercial strip where Dunkin sits, right on Crescent Road. The woods isn't really a forest. It's a skinny patch of trees, maybe a half-mile long, with a narrow dirt trail that locals use as a shortcut. There's trash scattered along the edges, beer bottles, old fast food bags, cigarette butts. It doesn't feel wild so much as abandoned. I'd been taking that path almost every morning since I started opening shifts, and I know how it sounds. A woman walking through the woods in the dark before dawn. Red flag city, right? My dad would have lost his mind if he knew. But when you're tired, every extra minute of sleep feels like gold. That shortcut saved me 10 whole minutes. 10 minutes meant hitting snooze twice. 10 minutes meant not feeling like a zombie when I unlocked the store. That's why I did it. That's why I kept doing it. Until that morning in November. It was November 7th. I remember because I just flipped the calendar on my fridge the night before. The clocks had gone back the previous weekend, which meant the mornings were darker than usual. The air was sharp, the kind that makes your throat ache when you breathe too fast. I overslept by 7 minutes. Nothing unusual, but it meant I was rushing more than usual. I threw on my black Dunkin hoodie, messy bun under a knit hat, slipped into my sneakers without even matching my socks. I grabbed my bag, locked the door, and was already jogging down the steps of my building before the sleep had even worn off. I had my earbuds in, always did. Same playlist I always listened to at that hour. Soft indie tracks, nothing too loud, just enough to keep me moving. The streets were the same as always. Dark houses, the occasional flicker of a TV through a living room window. A single car rolled past. Porch lights blinked on when I walked by. Ordinary, comfortingly ordinary. But the second I slipped through the chain-link gap at the edge of Melrose Street and entered the woods, the world changed. It hit me almost immediately. I pulled one earbud out, like I always did in the woods, partly to be cautious, partly because I liked hearing the crunch of leaves under my shoes. But this time, there was nothing. No wind through branches, no rustle of squirrels or stray cats. Just silence. It was the kind of silence that presses in, heavy, almost physical. I remember whispering to myself, "It's fine, just go. You're late," as if saying it out loud would make it true. I kept walking, one foot in front of the other. Then it came, that feeling. You know the one, that crawling, primal instinct that someone is watching you. The hair on the back of your neck stands up, your stomach drops. I froze, slowly turned around. The trail behind me was empty. I laughed a little, even muttered, "Get a grip, Elena." My voice sounded weirdly loud in the stillness, so I kept moving, faster now. It started about halfway through the woods. At first I thought it was an echo of my own steps, but then I realized it wasn't. The timing was off, one beat behind mine, then sometimes two. I stopped. The sound stopped. I started again, slower. The footsteps started again. I spun around. The path was empty. My hand slipped into my bag, curling around the small canister of pepper spray my friend Lily had given me last Christmas. I'd laughed when I opened it, but now I clutched it like it was the only thing tethering me to safety. "Hello?" My voice cracked in the dark. Nothing. No answer. No movement. Just the hollow stillness of trees that didn't even sway. I don't know why, but the bench has always unsettled me. It sits about 2/3 of the way down the path. Old wood, rotted, covered in moss. No one uses it. Why would they? It's damp, falling apart. That morning I saw something on it. For a split second there was a figure. A person, hunched forward, elbows on knees. I blinked, looked again. It was gone. Just the bench. My chest felt like it collapsed inward. I gripped the pepper spray tighter. My walk became a jog. The footsteps behind me quickened too. I wanted to scream, but my throat wouldn't open. The trail curved ahead, opening toward the faint glow of Crescent Road. I could see the Dunkin sign in the distance, pink and orange against the dark. I was almost out, almost safe. Then it happened. Something grabbed my shoulder. Not a brush, not a trick of branches. A grip. Firm, cold, unmistakable. I spun around, pepper spray raised. Nothing. No one. But the pressure of that hand lingered, icy against my skin. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, then bolted. Full sprint. My breath came in clouds, my sneakers pounding dirt until I was bursting out of the tree line, onto the lot behind Dunkin. I didn't stop until I was at the back door, fumbling for my keys with shaking hands. I didn't tell anyone that day. I couldn't. How do you explain something like that? "Sorry, I'm late. The woods tried to grab me." But I didn't take the shortcut home that night, and I never took it again. The next day, I forced myself to confide in Jace, my coworker. He didn't laugh. He just said quietly, "Yeah, don't go through there. My cousin saw something in those woods last winter." "What kind of something?" I pressed. He hesitated, then said, "She said there was a man." But he didn't walk right. Said he just stood still every time she looked back, but somehow closer. I started asking around, quietly. A delivery driver swore he'd heard someone whisper his name when he cut through at dawn. A woman from the plaza said she saw a child standing on the bench at 5 a.m., motionless. Someone else told me about a shadow that clung to the trees, never swaying when the branches did. Every story different, but always the same rules. Early morning, always when you're alone, and never twice. No one ever went back for a second time. It's been months since then. I moved closer to the store. I don't walk through the woods anymore. I don't even like parking near them. But sometimes when I take the trash out back after closing, I catch myself looking at that line of trees. And even though I can't see it from there, I swear, deep down, I know something's still sitting on that bench, waiting. Story 4. I never thought of myself as someone who believed in the supernatural. Ghost stories were just that. Stories. Fictional distractions for people who wanted an excuse to feel a chill in the safety of their living rooms. But I don't laugh at them anymore. My name is Ethan Rowe, and a year ago, I was working the night shift at a 24-hour Dunkin Donuts off Interstate 74 in Ashford, Indiana. If you look it up on a map, don't expect much. Ashford isn't a town people travel to, it's a town people pass through. Half the strip malls are abandoned, and the other half look like they should be. It's the kind of place where gas stations double as social centers, and the only real noise after midnight is the sound of 18-wheelers rushing by. I was 24 then, living with my aunt, Karen Rowe, after my mom passed away from a sudden stroke. Dad was long gone. He'd taken off when I was a kid, so Karen was the only one who stepped in. We weren't close. She was older, single, worked at the county clerk's office, and mostly kept to herself. Still, she gave me the spare bedroom in her little ranch-style house and told me I could stay as long as I pitched in for groceries and didn't bring trouble home. Fair enough. To cover expenses, I grabbed the graveyard shift at the Dunkin', midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. The quiet hours gave me time to think, sometimes too much time. Like most night shifts, you start to notice patterns. Regulars, people who only exist in that sliver of darkness most folks are asleep through. There was Frank, a warehouse guard who always ordered 2 Boston creams and a black coffee. Mr. Harlan, an older man who smelled faintly of motor oil, spoke maybe 3 words total, and never looked anyone in the eye. Then came the scattered handful of drunk couples, nurses just finishing their shifts, and twitchy-eyed truckers refueling with caffeine and sugar. It was predictable, almost comforting, until it wasn't. I'll never forget the first time I saw her. It was about 3:12 a.m. I know the exact time because I had just reset the in-store radio, and the digital clock blinked bright red numbers at me. I was refilling the donut tray near the front window when I caught a reflection in the glass. A woman. She was outside, standing perfectly still. Her hair was long and stringy, clinging to her face. Her skin looked pale in the fluorescent glow, almost waxy, like an old mannequin. She wasn't doing anything, just staring. I spun around, expecting to see her pressed up against the glass. But the lot was empty. No one there. I tried brushing it off. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. It happens. But when I saw her again the next night, same time, same blank stare, my stomach dropped. And when I saw her a third night in a row, standing in a slightly different spot each time, always just before or after 3 a.m., that's when the dread started settling in. The next evening, I mentioned it to my coworker Luis, who worked the earlier shift before me. "Dude, you're just tired," he said with a laugh, pulling off his apron. "This lot brings out all kinds of crazies. Unless she comes in waving a knife, let her stand out there and creep herself out." Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one locked inside for 8 hours straight. That same night, something odd happened. Around 3:30, after my mystery woman didn't show, I noticed movement near the back door. A cat, small, filthy white, but streaked with gray dirt, slipped in through the propped open side door. She froze when she saw me, wide eyes glowing in the dim light. "Hey," I said softly, crouching down. "It's okay." I poured a little milk into a cup and slid it toward her. She approached cautiously, then drank. After that, she curled up under the counter near my stool and stayed there until morning. By the time my shift ended, I felt a strange attachment. I carried her home in a cardboard box. When I walked through the door, Karen raised an eyebrow. "You brought home a stray." She was freezing. "I'll take her to the vet tomorrow. She's clean." "Ethan," Karen frowned, crossing her arms. "Strays carry fleas, diseases. And that one—" She glanced down at the cat, who stared back unblinking. "She gives me the creeps." "She's just a cat." Number, she's watching. I laughed it off, but Karen never warmed to her. I named her Marshmallow. Don't ask me why. It just felt right. Having Marshmallow around helped. Coming home after a long, lonely night to a little purring body felt grounding, comforting. But Karen, she acted stranger by the day. I caught her more than once just standing in the hallway, staring at the cat like she was trying to solve a puzzle. One morning she muttered under her breath, "She watches me, even when I sleep." Cats do that. They're curious. Karen shook her head. Number, not curious. Calculating, I brushed it off as paranoia. But part of me wondered if she was right. Then came Wednesday. I dragged myself home after my shift, expecting Karen's car to be gone. She always left for work by 7:30 sharp. But there it was, still in the driveway. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. No coffee brewing. No TV news humming in the background. "Karen?" I called. No answer. Her bedroom door was closed. Strange. She never shut it all the way. "Hated feeling boxed in," she said. I knocked. "Karen, you all right?" Nothing. I tried the knob. Locked. My stomach sank. Karen never locked her door. Panic rising, I grabbed a screwdriver and jimmied the lock. Took me 4 shaky minutes. When the door gave way, a smell hit me. Stale, heavy, like damp stone. Karen lay in bed, eyes wide open, mouth parted, skin clammy. "Karen!" I rushed forward. Her chest moved faintly. Shallow breaths, alive but frozen. And at the foot of the bed sat Marshmallow, calm, staring. I called 911, my voice trembling. Paramedics arrived fast. The second they touched Karen, she gasped violently, coughing like she'd been drowning. "What happened?" she whispered. Her vitals checked out fine. She refused the hospital, claimed she'd just fainted. But when I pressed, she said something I'll never forget. I felt something heavy, sitting on me, like it was inside me. 2 nights later, my first day off in weeks, Karen and I watched The Shining together. Ironic choice. She seemed tired, but okay. She went to bed early. I fell asleep around 1 a.m. At 3:04, I woke to the wrongness of the air. Cold. Heavy. Someone was in my bed. I turned and froze. Karen lay beside me, eyes open. Faint smile stretched across her face. "What the hell, Karen?" I scrambled back. "I just wanted to be near you," she said slowly. "You're kind. You gave me milk. You took me in." "What are you talking about?" She tilted her head unnaturally. "I'm not Karen." The words carved ice into my spine. "What?" "You gave me warmth when I had none. I was hungry, weak. You let me in." My voice shook. "This isn't funny." Her smile flattened. "I'm not joking." Karen was breaking inside. I took the space she left. I backed toward the door. "You're insane." Her eyes darkened. "I'm not insane. I'm older than insanity. You wouldn't understand." She lifted a hand. My body locked, limbs frozen, breath caught. "Sleep," she whispered, and the world went black. I woke in the morning, alone, sunlight pouring through the blinds. Karen's car was gone. So was she. No note, no trace. The police filed a missing persons report, but treated it like she'd run off. When I told them about the paralysis, about her saying, "I'm not Karen," I left those parts out. Who would believe me? A week later, I hired a private investigator, Ria Delgado, ex-law enforcement, sharp as a knife. She called me after 7 days. "Ethan, Dana's phone hasn't been used since Wednesday, but I pulled footage from your security cam. You'll want to see this." The video was grainy, but clear enough. Thursday night, 2:57 a.m. Karen, or something wearing her shape, walked barefoot out the front door, cradling Marshmallow in her arms. She looked up at the camera, smiled, then stepped into the woods behind our house. Neither of them were ever seen again. It's been 8 months. I quit Dunkin, moved to another town, tried to build something new. But sometimes, especially on night shifts at my new job, I still feel it. Around 3 a.m., I'll catch a flicker of movement outside. Something white, not quite human, not quite animal. Always watching, always waiting. And I can't stop wondering, did I invite it in? Story 5. I was 9 years old the year it happened. old enough to understand when something wasn't right, but still too young to fully grasp the weight of fear when it lingers in the air like a smell that never goes away. My family had just moved to a small town in Pennsylvania called Crestwood, about an hour outside of Pittsburgh. Crestwood wasn't the kind of place people moved to. It was more the kind of place people moved from. A quiet little town with rows of modest houses, gas stations on every corner, and a Dunkin Donuts that seemed to be everyone's morning pit stop. We moved there in late September of 2004. My dad, Eric Daniels, had lost his job at the steel plant where he'd worked nearly 15 years, and Crestwood was the only place we could afford after my mom picked up a part-time job at Dunkin'. She told us it would be temporary just until Dad found work again, but even at 9, I could tell she was saying it more for herself than for us. My mom's name was Laura, and she was the kind of person who tried to put a bow on everything, literally and figuratively. She tied bows on my sister's braids for school, put bows on cookie bags during Christmas, and tied little ribbons on our backpacks the first day of school. But no bow in the world could make Crestwood feel like home. My little sister, Emma, was 6 then. She was the light of the house, always laughing, always singing. She had this way of turning anything scary into something funny. If she tripped, she'd bow like a ballerina. If the dog barked too loud, she'd bark back until he stopped. But after that fall, I don't think she laughed the same way ever again. On weekends, when Mom worked morning shifts at Dunkin', she'd take me with her. The shop sat right off Broad Street, squeezed between a laundromat and a liquor store. It was small with only a few booths by the window and a counter that stretched toward the back ovens. The smell was overwhelming. Sweet glaze, burnt coffee, fried dough that seemed to stick in your clothes for the rest of the day. I'd sit at a booth with a chocolate-frosted donut and my Game Boy while she worked. The regulars, truckers, old men in baseball caps, nurses getting off night shifts, would stop by our table to say hello. "That your boy, Laura?" they'd ask. She'd nod proudly. Emma usually stayed home with Dad during those mornings, but during the week, Mom worked evenings. That meant she wouldn't be home until close to 10 p.m. Dad would make us grilled cheese or mac and cheese, and we'd eat on the couch while watching cartoons. By late October, Crestwood already felt like it was shutting down for winter. Nights were colder, and the neighborhood kids were getting excited about Halloween. That year, Mom came home from a shift carrying 3 pumpkins from a farmer's stand near Dunkin'. "Thought we could carve these tomorrow," she said, setting them on the kitchen table. Emma's eyes lit up. "Can mine have eyelashes?" Mom laughed. "Your pumpkin can have whatever you want." We carved them on the Friday before Halloween. Dad spread newspaper across the table while Emma and I scooped out the guts with big spoons. "Gross," Emma squealed, dangling a string of pumpkin slime like it was a worm. "Don't fling that at me," I warned, narrowing my eyes. "Or what?" She leaned closer, threatening to drop it on my head. "Or I'll tell Mom you ate one last year." "I did not." "You did too." "Boys," Mom interrupted, laughing as she wiped her hands on a towel. "Carve, don't argue." I made mine with sharp triangle eyes and a jagged grin, the kind of pumpkin you'd see in a horror movie. Emma gave hers big round eyes and a goofy smile, just like her. When we were finished, Mom clapped her hands together. "Perfect, let's put them outside." It was around 8:30 p.m. Jeopardy had just started in the living room. We carried our pumpkins to the front porch, stepping out into the crisp October air. That's when I saw him. At first I thought it was just a shadow, a shape standing at the end of our driveway, right where the light from the porch faded into darkness. But it wasn't a shadow. It was a man. He wasn't tall, maybe a little taller than Mom, with hunched shoulders and a beanie pulled low over his head. He wore muddy brown clothes, not quite black, not quite gray. In his hands he held something. Maybe a bag, maybe nothing. I couldn't tell. Emma noticed him too. "Who's that?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the man moved. Not back toward the street like you'd expect, but sideways, fast, toward the side of our house where the garage sat. Emma gasped and clutched her pumpkin. We bolted inside, slamming the door. "Mom, there's a man outside," I shouted. Mom rushed from the kitchen, donut box still in her hands. "What? What man?" Emma pointed toward the door. "He ran by the garage." Mom's face went pale. She called for Dad, who came upstairs from the basement, carrying a flashlight. "I'll check," he muttered, throwing on his jacket. We waited. 10 minutes passed before he came back inside, irritated but calm. "No one's out there," he said. "Probably just some teenager messing around." Mom didn't look convinced, but she forced a smile. "Okay, let's just put the pumpkins down and lock up for the night." The next morning, I woke to Mom on the phone with the police. "What happened?" I asked. She motioned for me to wait. Dad walked in, rubbing his neck. "Basement windows smashed," he said. "Doors kicked in. Nothing's missing, just damage." My stomach dropped. "What about the pumpkins?" He sighed and nodded toward the window. I peeked through the blinds. Both pumpkins were gone, obliterated across the driveway in smeared, shattered pieces. The police came, took our statements, and said the same thing they probably always said around Halloween. Probably just kids being stupid. "Keep your doors locked. Call us if anything else happens." Emma cried the whole time, clutching her stuffed bunny. We didn't hand out candy that Halloween. Dad said he wasn't in the mood. It was Tuesday night. Mom had a closing shift at Dunkin. Dad was helping Emma with homework in the kitchen while I sat upstairs reading comics. At 9:20 p.m., the doorbell rang. "I got it!" I shouted, racing downstairs. When I opened the door, no one was there. But on the porch, sitting exactly where my pumpkin used to be, was a new one. Perfectly round. No carving, no stem, just a plain pumpkin. Taped to the door was a note, written on napkin paper, the same kind Mom brought home from Dunkin. In red ink, it read, "Yours smiled." "That's why I left it for last," I screamed. Dad came running, grabbed the note, and yanked Emma away from the window. The police came again. This time they dusted for prints, took the pumpkin, and promised to look into it. They even visited Dunkin to check security cameras, but nothing came of it. We moved 2 months later. Dad found a new job in another county. Mom quit Dunkin. Emma never carved another pumpkin again. I'm 28 now. Emma's 25. Every October, we both feel it again. The memory, the fear, the cold. I don't carve pumpkins anymore. Not because I'm scared, but because I know one year there might be another one waiting for me. Another pumpkin, another note, just to remind me he's still out there. Story 6. I never thought something as ordinary as picking up donuts could decide whether I lived or died. My name is Daniel Ross. I'm 31 years old, and until a few months ago, I worked as a junior financial analyst for a mid-sized insurance company called Harbor & Finch, based in a suburb outside of Cleveland, Ohio. It wasn't a dream job, but it paid the bills and kept me afloat after a messy breakup left me with more debt than pride. The job itself was bearable. The part that wasn't bearable was my boss, Harold Becker. Becker had this way of reminding you, in subtle and not so subtle ways, that you were disposable. He thrived on power plays, long lectures about punctuality, sharp sighs during meetings when someone fumbled a number, sarcastic quips that sounded like jokes until you realized they weren't. In my first month, I was late twice. Both times, traffic was the culprit, but Becker didn't care. The second time, he closed his office door and gave me a 20-minute lecture about respect for the workplace and the optics of reliability. I walked out of that meeting sweating, embarrassed, and with a new personal rule. Never give Becker a reason to doubt me again. So when Friday rolled around, and it was my turn to bring breakfast for the office tradition, donuts, bagels, sometimes breakfast sandwiches, I knew it was my chance to make a small deposit back into the Goodwill Bank. It wasn't much, but in an office environment like ours, little things mattered. People remembered who forgot cream cheese or who grabbed too many plain bagels. I set 2 alarms Thursday night. I even laid out my clothes. But none of it mattered when I overslept Friday morning. My first alarm went off at 6:30, and I must have smacked snooze without realizing it. The second one at 7 o'clock barely pulled me out of a fog. By the time I dragged myself out of the shower and into my car, it was already 7:54 a.m. Work started at 8:30 sharp. The nearest Dunkin Donuts was 15 minutes away without traffic. I told myself I could still make it if everything went perfectly. I even rehearsed my order in my head while driving. 2 dozen assorted, no coconut, Lisa in HR was allergic, and make sure to get at least half a dozen chocolate glazed, Becker's favorite. Maybe throw in a box of Munchkins to win some bonus points. When I pulled into the Dunkin lot, it was 8:10. Tight, but manageable. Or so I thought. Inside, the smell of sugar and coffee hit me like a wall. There was already a line of about 10 people, and it was crawling forward at a glacial pace. I glanced at my phone. 8:12. Anxiety started buzzing in my chest. One by one, the line moved. A couple ordered their coffees, a construction worker grabbed 2 sandwiches, a student picked up a mobile order, and then there was the man in front of me. He looked to be in his late 50s, tall, lanky, wearing a green flannel shirt and a faded baseball cap. At first, he seemed normal enough, but when he reached the counter, everything stopped. Let's see," he muttered, staring at the menu like it was written in another language. The cashier, a young woman, maybe 19, with tired eyes, waited patiently. "Do you still have those, cream cheese croissant things?" he asked. "Yes, we do," she said politely. "And, are the hash browns fresh?" "Same batch from this morning." Okay. What about apple fritters? Are they warm?" I checked my phone again. 8:16. My jaw tightened. He tapped his chin, oblivious to the line behind him. "Do you have cinnamon twist today?" The cashier leaned over the display. "We've got one left." "Okay, I'll take that." "No, wait. What's the thing with the maple frosting again?" Something in me snapped. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice low but firm. "Hey, sorry, but could you maybe speed it up? I'm running late for work." The man turned to me slowly. His face was expressionless, but his eyes narrowed. "Then you should have gotten here earlier," he muttered. I clenched my teeth, forcing a smile. "I just need 2 dozen donuts. I'll be out in under a minute." He turned back to the cashier like I hadn't spoken. "Yeah, well, I was here first." The cashier gave me an apologetic glance but didn't intervene. Finally, after what felt like forever, he settled on 3 donuts and a coffee. Relief washed over me until he pulled out a plastic bag full of coins, quarters, nickels, dimes. He started counting them out, one by one. I stared in disbelief. "Sir, please," I said, exasperated. "Here." I pulled out a $10 bill and held it out. "Let me just cover it." The man looked at me surprised. His eyes softened for a second. "You don't have to." "Please," I insisted. He nodded slowly and stepped aside. As he did, he muttered something under his breath. I couldn't catch it. The cashier rang him up, then turned to me. I rattled off my order at lightning speed. She moved quickly, boxing up the donuts, even tossing in a few extras. I swiped my card, grabbed the boxes, and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. The cashier muttered something under her breath. I wasn't sure I heard her right. "Excuse me?" I asked. She looked up at me with a wide, unnatural smile. Her eyes were flat, empty. I said, "I hate you all." My stomach tightened. "What?" Her smile stretched wider. "Have a great day." I didn't reply. I just turned and walked out. When I reached my car, the man with the coins was still parked directly in front of me. His old sedan blocked the exit. I honked once. No movement. Twice. Nothing. Frustrated, I stepped out and approached his window. His head was slumped against the steering wheel. "Sir?" I called, knocking on the glass. No reaction. Dread crawled up my spine. I tried the door. It was unlocked. His body slumped sideways as the door opened. His skin was flushed red, his tongue lolled out, and flecks of powdered sugar clung to his lips. He was dead. My stomach lurched, and then his foot slipped off the brake. The car rolled forward, picking up speed, until it clipped the back of an SUV and slammed into a traffic pole. Horns blared, glass shattered. I stood frozen, donuts in hand, as chaos erupted. Something was wrong, horribly wrong. Heart pounding, I sprinted back toward the Dunkin'. The cashier. Something about her wasn't right. I shoved open the front door. She was gone. Customers were scattering, confused by the crash outside. I circled around the building. The back door was propped open, swinging slightly. I stepped inside. That's when I saw him. The real Dunkin' employee, a middle-aged man in a brown uniform, lay face down in the kitchen. His skin was pale, lips bluish. A fine dusting of white powder clung to his shirt. I crouched, shaking. No pulse. The girl, she wasn't an employee. She had put on a uniform, poisoned the donuts, and vanished. The donuts. My donuts. I bolted back to my car, ripped open the boxes, and dumped them onto the asphalt. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped my phone dialing 911. "Emergency services," a calm voice answered. I stammered out everything. The dead man, the cashier, the poisoned donuts. They said units were already on their way. The next few hours blurred into a haze of flashing lights, police tape, and questions I couldn't fully answer. The medical examiner later confirmed it. Cyanide. Traces had been found in the frosting. Surveillance footage offered little help. The cameras had been disabled an hour before opening. No one knew who the girl was. No ID, no trace in the system. She had simply appeared, carried out her plan, and disappeared. When I finally called Becker to explain, he didn't believe me. "Daniel, you're late again," he snapped. "Someone just died in front of me," I said, voice shaking. "The donuts were poisoned. I could have brought them to the office. You're making excuses. Don't bother coming in. You're done here." I hung up on him. It didn't matter. Because all I could think was this. If the coin man hadn't been so unbearably slow, if he hadn't delayed me, I would have walked into my office with 24 poisoned donuts. My co-workers, Lisa, Becker, all of them, would have eaten them. They'd all be dead. I still don't know who she was or why she did it. But I know this. Sometimes the people who frustrate us most end up saving our lives in ways we can never imagine. And I'll never look at a box of donuts the same way again. Story 7. I used to think nothing bad could ever happen in a place that smelled like warm glaze, fryer oil, and cheap coffee. My name's Aaron Whitfield. I'm 26 now, but this story happened when I was just turning 22. Back then, I was living in a small town called Hollow Pines, Tennessee, a blink-and-you-miss-it kind of place, wedged between the Cumberland Plateau and the winding back roads that led to bigger towns like Cookeville or Crossville. Most people only passed through Hollow Pines on their way to Nashville or Knoxville. You wouldn't think of it as a place where anything remarkable or terrifying would ever happen. The town had one gas station, a Dollar General, a couple of churches, and our 24-hour Dunkin Donuts sitting right off Route 127 like a glowing orange beacon in the dark. That Dunkin was my whole world for 2 years. I had dropped out of college after my sophomore year. My dad had died suddenly, heart failure in his early 50s, and my mom couldn't handle the house payments on her own. I moved back in with her, into our aging ranch-style house near the base of the ridge. Mom wasn't the same after Dad died. She never slept right, never smiled like before. She'd wait up for me every night, even though I begged her not to. Money was tight, so when I landed the midnight to 8 a.m. shift at Dunkin, it felt like stability. My co-workers joked that I was the ghost of Hollow Pines Dunkin because no one else could stick out the night shift as long as I did. Most nights were easy. Truckers passing through, high school kids sneaking out, the occasional drunk. I had my routine. Clean the fryers, refill the glaze tanks, scrub the counters, maybe sneak a cruller or Boston cream if nobody was looking. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. Or at least I thought so. It was December 29th, 2021. I remember because Christmas snow still clung to the parking lot in dirty piles, and the locals called that week Hell Week, when tourists swarmed the Smokies, clogging every road, every diner, every gas station. Hollow Pines wasn't exactly a tourist destination, but when the mountain cabins filled up, people spilled into our little town for gas and late-night coffee. That night started like any other. By 12:30 a.m., the store was dead quiet. The snow outside looked like glitter under the yellow parking lot lights. I was wiping down the counter, humming to myself, when the door chime dinged. And that's when I saw her. She looked wrong. 15, maybe 16, thin as a rail, pale skin, damp hair plastered to her cheeks. She wore a gray hoodie and jeans soaked to the knees, and her sneakers, cheap white Keds, were soaked through, laces undone. But she wasn't shivering, not one bit. Her eyes, I'll never forget them, fogged over like frosted glass. I gave my usual awkward smile. "Hey there. Cold out, huh? What can I get you started with?" She didn't answer. She just stood there staring at the donut case like she was trying to remember what food was. Something about her silence got under my skin. Most runaways or late-night kids come in loud, nervous, fidgety. This girl was just blank. I glanced at the CCTV monitor above the register she'd tracked in snow, but I hadn't heard a car pull up. Outside the parking lot was empty. No fresh tire marks, no footprints except hers. "You all right?" I asked carefully. She slowly lifted her gaze toward me, not exactly looking at me, more like through me. Her lips moved, no sound, then barely audible. "He's coming down the mountain." The words made my chest tighten. Who's coming?" I asked. She turned her head toward the big window booth in the corner, the one facing the tree line at the edge of the ridge. She walked over and sat down, staring out into the dark woods beyond the parking lot. I followed, carrying a napkin-wrapped cruller. "Hey, you hungry, fresh batch?" She didn't look at me, just raised one shaking hand and pointed out the window. I followed her finger. At first, nothing. Then movement. Something shifting between the trees. Not a deer, not a bear upright. My brain scrambled to rationalize a lost hiker, someone out for a night walk. But then it moved again. Fast, too fast. The motion was jerky, unnatural, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. The girl whispered, "He never left." My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I was with my brother. 3 nights ago. We went hiking. I ran. I didn't look back." The fluorescence above us flickered. Once. Twice. Then, every single light in the Dunkin' died at once. The parking lot lamps buzzed, sputtered, and went black. Even the glowing orange sign out front cut out, leaving the store drowning in shadows. I sprinted behind the counter, fumbling for my phone. No service, no Wi-Fi. The router lights were dead. On the CCTV screen, static rolled. Then one feed cleared. Camera 2, the lot. A tall, thin shape stood just beyond the snow glow. Not a man. Too tall. Arms too long, dangling almost to its knees. Its pale head tilted slightly, like it was listening. The girl pressed herself into the booth corner, covering her ears. "He waits for the ones who run. I shouldn't have come here." I blinked, looked out the window. Nothing there. Just falling snow. "Okay," I muttered, trying to steady my voice. "We're going in the back. Office. Come on." I led her into the small back office, locking the door behind us. The cameras flickered again. Camera 3, the front counter, showed it. The thing. Inside. It was dragging itself slowly across the tile, arms scraping, head turning side to side like it was sniffing. The jerky movements made my stomach lurch. The girl whimpered. "It never leaves the mountains. But people, they bring it down." Static swallowed the feed. Then, bang. The office door shuttered. Once, twice. Then came the sound. A slow, deliberate scraping, like claws dragging down wood. Not frantic, patient. I felt cold seep into my bones. A cold so deep it felt like my marrow had frozen. Then silence. Nothing. We waited. Hours. When sunlight finally bled through the office blinds, I opened the door. The Dunkin' was spotless. No snow tracks, no scratches on the door, no broken lights, and no girl. I called the police, stumbling through my story. They searched the woods. No hikers missing, no reports of a girl fitting her description. The CCTV footage? Wiped clean after midnight, just static. Everyone chalked it up to grief, stress, sleep deprivation. 2 weeks later, I quit. 6 months after, Hollow Pines Dunkin' shut down. The building still sits there, boarded up, windows spray painted with no trespassing. Teenagers dare each other to break in at night. They don't know what waits just beyond the tree line. But I do. Every time snow dusts the ridge, I remember that face I never saw, and the girl who was never reported missing. And sometimes when I drive past the empty lot, I swear I see faint tracks in the snow leading from the woods to the door. Story 8, I was just trying to get by. That's the truth of it. My name's Daniel Reyes, and back in the fall of 2021, I was 25 years old, broke, and still trying to figure out what the hell I was doing with my life. I dropped out of community college 2 years earlier after realizing I didn't have the money, or maybe the discipline, to finish. My mom had passed away when I was 21, lung cancer, even though she never smoked a day in her life, and my dad had taken off long before that. I didn't have much of a family safety net, and the friends I grew up with had all moved away to bigger cities. So when my relationship with Claire fell apart that summer, 3 years together, just gone over a stupid fight that turned into a breakup I didn't see coming, I packed what I had into my old Honda Civic and drove until I couldn't think anymore. I landed in a place called Willow Creek, Indiana. Don't bother looking for it on a map unless you squint. It's the kind of small Midwestern town where everyone either knows you or assumes you don't belong. I found a room above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and mold at the same time, and I got a job at the only 24-hour Dunkin' within 20 miles. The strip mall it sat in had seen better days. Half the units were empty, and the parking lot had potholes big enough to swallow a wheel. But rent was cheap, and the Dunkin' manager, a wiry guy named Frank Dempsey, didn't care much who he hired as long as you could count change and didn't steal from the till. I worked nights mostly, midnight to 8 a.m., the dead shift. Some nights we barely got 5 customers after 2 a.m., mostly long-haul truckers coming off I-74 or local drunks looking for something greasy to soak up the beer. It was quiet, boring work, but it kept me afloat. That's the setup. Now here's the part that still keeps me awake when it rains. It was September 23rd, 2021, a Thursday night rolling into Friday morning. The forecast had called for showers, but by 3 a.m. it was a full-blown thunderstorm. You could feel the building hum every time thunder cracked. The fluorescent lights above me flickered once or twice, like they were nervous. I was supposed to be working with Angela, a 40-year-old single mom who usually covered the register while I cleaned and did prep, but she called out last minute. Her son had an asthma attack, and honestly, I didn't blame her. That left me alone in the store, which wasn't unusual. Frank cut corners wherever he could. Around 4:15, the storm started getting weird. The wind wasn't just blowing, it was pressing, like invisible hands shoving against the windows. I kept hearing this groaning sound from out back, like metal twisting. Probably the dumpster lid slamming in the wind, I told myself. Now here's the thing about our Dunkin'. The bathrooms had been out of order for months. Something about tree roots messing with the sewer line. Instead of fixing it properly, Frank had cobbled together a solution. A wooden outhouse-style shack built behind the store. Over what he claimed was an old septic vault left from a gas station that used to sit on the lot decades earlier. It's safe, he told us. Don't use it when it storms, though. Ground gets soft back there. But people used it anyway. What choice did they have? At 4:37 a.m., I was restocking the napkin holders when the bell over the door jingled. A group of 5 teenage girls walked in, drenched from the rain. They looked about 16, maybe 17. Hoodies, pajama pants, hair plastered to their faces. The leader, tall, with black hair streaked blue, came up to the counter. "Hey, bathroom?" she asked, pushing wet strands behind her ears. I hesitated. "Out back," I said finally. "It's that shed to the left of the dumpster. You'll need a phone flashlight. It's dark." Her face screwed up. "Out back? For real?" "Plumbing's down," I said, giving the same apology I'd given 100 customers before. They groaned but headed back out into the rain without ordering anything. Through the glass, I watched them huddle together like penguins, then disappear toward the alley. That was the last normal moment. 15 minutes later, I was wiping down the front counter, half listening to the rain hammering the roof when I heard it. A scream, high-pitched, cut off sharp. I froze, rag in my hand. Then another scream, overlapping, panicked. I bolted out the back door. Rain slammed into me sideways, cold and blinding. I slipped once in the puddles before I got to the alley. The outhouse door was hanging crooked, one hinge ripped nearly free. And clinging to the frame was one of the girls, shaking, her face pale in the beam of her iPhone flashlight. "Help! They fell!" she screamed at me. "They fell in! The floor's gone!" "What?" I staggered closer. I looked inside. The entire wooden floor had collapsed into the vault beneath. It was a pit, maybe 8 feet deep, half filled with a disgusting mixture of rainwater and decades-old sewage. Four of the girls were down there, thrashing, clawing at the slick concrete walls, trying to climb beams that jutted down like broken ribs. One girl was already submerged to her neck, sputtering. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "Do something," the girl at the door sobbed. I ran back inside, grabbed a mop handle and an extension cord from the supply closet, tied them together like a makeshift lifeline, and sprinted back. "Grab this," I shouted, lowering it down. A smaller girl, maybe 14, latched onto the pole with desperate strength. I hauled her up, my arms screaming with effort, until she was close enough that the girl at the door helped drag her out. The others were still down there, screaming, coughing, one crying, "Mama, please," over and over in the dark. I went back for another, but she slipped beneath the surface, pulling another with her. Their gurgling shrieks echoed up the pit. "Oh God," I muttered, my hands trembling. I pulled out my phone, called 911. The dispatcher said responders were delayed. Roads were flooding. It would be at least half an hour. We didn't have half an hour. I sprinted across the street to Baker's Auto, hoping the owner, Tom Baker, might be there early. He was, a stocky guy in his 50s, unlocking the side door. "Tom, you gotta come, now!" I yelled, grabbing his arm. He didn't even ask questions, just followed me into the storm. When he saw the scene, he swore under his breath, then ran to his truck. He came back with a heavy-duty tow strap. Together, we lowered it into the pit. One girl clutched it weakly. She tried to hold on to another, but the second wasn't moving. "Get the live ones first," Tom barked, his voice tight. I hated him for saying it, but he was right. We hauled one girl up, then another. They collapsed onto the wet pavement, covered in filth, shaking uncontrollably. One vomited immediately. By the time paramedics arrived, 40 minutes later, two girls were still in the pit. They got a ladder down, pulled one more out alive, barely breathing. The last, she was floating face down, lifeless. Her name, I would learn later, was Lila Jensen. She was 16 years old. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pit, heard those screams echoing. Frank, the manager, tried to dodge blame. Said he told people not to use the outhouse in storms, but everyone knew it had been rotting for months. The smell had been unbearable some nights. The county shut the store down. Frank lost his business license. I quit Willow Creek 2 weeks later. Got a job at a gas station in Ohio. Tried to forget. But sometimes when it storms hard and I hear a creak in the walls, I smell it again. I hear the girls' voices, and I see Lila's blank, peaceful face, floating in the dark.